to the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education regular meeting for Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. Are we in compliance with the open meeting law?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Would you please call the roll?
Wyman.
Here.
Carlin.
Here.
Herzog.
Here.
Carnes.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Salaji.
Here.
Wright.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We are very fortunate tonight to have 3 students from Reed Elementary School who have taken time out of their schedules. One needs to get to a basketball game, so we need to move this process along. But we're very happy to have Ethan and Riley King with us and Madeline Greeninger, who are going to be leading us in the pledge. So let's stand and join them.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For many years, we have invited students to join us in the pledge. First of all, we always do the pledge, and we think it's important to have students join us because they practice every day. And also, it reminds us as board members why we're here, students first, and it reminds us that we need to make sure that we make all our decisions in the best interest of students while still being good stewards of the financial issues of the district. So, to recognize the contributions of these 3 students to tonight's meeting, we have a special certificate for each one. First, I'll call on Madeline Greeninger. Thank you, Madeline. We appreciate your coming tonight. And then we have Ethan King. Thank you, Ethan. Riley King. And most of us have seen that big, beautiful school that's being built over on Jackson, the north end being Nevada. And Madeline and Riley will be among the first 6th graders in that building, so we can put actual faces of who's going to be in that building next year. So congratulations and thank you for coming tonight. And now it's time to hear from the Reed principal, which is another practice we've done. We have students from a school come and lead us in the pledge. We invite the principal and whoever he or she wants to bring along to tell us of the good things going on in that particular building. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Emily Eisenschink. I'm the principal at Reed Elementary. Just started there this summer, so my first year. Excited to be part of not only the Reed family, but Oshkosh as well. So thank you for having me here this evening. 3 things I wanted to really highlight and celebrate this evening. The first is that we survived construction season. So the new Algoma Boulevard in front of Reed Elementary, and really that gave us an opportunity to partner with the police department, who were super helpful with the traffic flow as we were kind of blocked in for where we could access our building. So really grateful for their partnership and support. And also with the relationship we have with our neighbors at the Methodist Church next to us. So a chance to highlight their service to our students and our community. So not only have they been incredible neighbors, and but they also provide programming for students on the days that we have professional development for teachers. So when there is no school for students, kids from our neighborhood are welcome to enjoy some fun programming, educational, exercise, healthy snacks, and things like that. So they're showing up for us in a huge way, and we're really grateful for that. The second I'd like to highlight is the RISE program that we're doing in reading. Our 2nd graders are part of a pilot program that we're doing to provide small group targeted instruction for our readers so that they are getting quality instruction in a small group setting targeted at the skills that they need. So we're really working to boost our literacy skills in that way. We have our special education teacher, our English as a second language teacher there as well. And we're also partnering with some retired teachers, a retired professor, and then students from the UW to fill that out, because it does include quite a few adults to make that rotation happen. So we're really fortunate to see that. We're very excited to see the growth that kids have been reaching. In fact, for students to reflect on the goal that they've set for their reading and their stretch goal as well, so that we're making over a year's growth in a year and in a half year's time. So the scores are incredible, and I look forward to continuing that and expanding to other grades as well. So huge kudos to our literacy program, our coaches and the teachers for doing that. And then one most exciting thing is the playground project that we have. We have an incredible partner on our parent-teacher organization who is working to gather corporate and private donors to put together a new playground for Reed. So what we know is that our community, especially right around Reed School, could really use a beautiful playground, and we, as far as recess and that time for kids to be outside as well. So we're super fortunate that that she has come on board with us and hired an architect to come in. The architect came in on family night, and the kids were given an opportunity to vote for the elements of the playground that looked most appealing to them. So in true form of democracy, they were given 6 smiley face stickers to put on these large posters of what looked fun. And so taking student input, engaging corporate donors in the community to really come together and show up for our kids. So we're fortunate for that and hoping that we can see that project this summer. So if not, then maybe next summer. But that's what's going on. Lots of good things. And as always, you're welcome to come visit us. We were lucky to have, love your t-shirt, by the way. We were lucky to have Chris stop by. So we'd love to have you anytime. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next part of our agenda, we have Art Recognition Awards. These are 2 of my favorite meetings all year because we fill this room with parents and students, and we're here to honor students who have been recognized for their contributions in the area of art. And it's really fun to see the kids and the parents walk around this building and find the art that's been displayed and will remain up for some period of time. So we also have certificates for all of these students, and so I believe Dr. Gunlock is going to read the names, and Dr. Davis and I will be presenting the certificates. So congratulations to all the students. We'll have a chance to applaud for all of them when they're first introduced and then all together at the end.
Our first award goes to Evelyn Mole. Next award goes to Pamela Tao.
I know she's here. I saw her in the hallway. Come on up, Pamela.
Melinda Vang. Elsa Hirschberg. Jacqueline Lopez. Aluel Thon. Katsumi Zhang. Kiera Durant. Aliana Perez. Brandon Burnt. Melody Zhang. Keely Ulrich. Cadence Price. Emily Duran. Phoenix Hodgen. Joshua Alec. Lawand Curdy. Sunshine Zhang. Christian Plato. Trinity Duchek. Devin Zimmerman. Aria Schneider. Margaret James. Jordan Lenz. Alyssa Parrott. Lauren Hitz.
If someone wants to stand closer, feel free. Thank you.
Katie Hilt. Grace Gazuski. Isaiah Nowak. Wow. Ada Bowman. J.D. Boyd. Kaylee Hansen. Keontae Sanders. Ethan Monroe. And Bryce Beck.
Let's give a round of applause to all these students. We will make sure that those who weren't able to be here tonight will receive their certificates, and we'll make the same offer to all of you that we made to the students who did the pledge with their parents. If you like, you're more than welcome to stay for the meeting. If you have other things to do tonight, we respect and understand your needs. We move on at this time. But thank you for coming, and congratulations to all the award winners.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Good job.
Great job.
Next on our agenda is our land acknowledgement with Dr. Davis.
Yes, so as we gather today, we would like to acknowledge that in Oshkosh, we are on the ancestral homelands of the Ho-Chunk Nation and the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin, who lived along the western shores of Lake Winnebago, Wisconsin's largest freshwater lake entirely within its border. We acknowledge these indigenous sovereign communities who have stewarded this land throughout generations and pay respect to their elders, past and present. We welcome the duty and the opportunity to share stewardship of these lands.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Next on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Is there any board member who wishes to make any changes in the order in which items are listed on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll accept the agenda as noted by acclamation. Next, we have the board president's report. And the single item that I will be addressing tonight is that of retirements. Once again, we have two individuals who are choosing to make a change in their stage in life, and they've faithfully served the school district for many years, and we want to acknowledge their contributions to the success of our students and our families and our community. Helena Hammes has been an ID teacher assistant at Webster Stanley Middle School since 2017, and she will be retiring in early June. Deb Hilscher is currently an IST curriculum specialist at the middle school level, primarily serving Carl Traeger Middle School. Deb has been in the district since 1999 and has served as a classroom teacher, primarily in the area of science, and also continues to work with our science educators. So we want to wish these two all the best as they move on into retirement. Wish them a long, healthy, and happy retirement, and of course, always keep the door open for them to return as substitutes. Shameless, yes. I'm getting feedback up here from my colleagues, that's okay. All right, moving on, we have the superintendent's report. Dr. Davis.
Yes, so first of all, we'll kick it over to Oshkosh North and Oshkosh West for their school reports. So, Owen, would you like to start tonight?
Left or right?
Okay.
Hi, I'm Owen Schulze, and I am here to give the Oshkosh North January update. So, it's been a while since I've been here, I think 2 months, so a lot has happened. So, going to go all the way back to the holiday season. Our Madrigal Singers had a big season over December. They had 39 performances throughout churches, nursing homes, and all the schools on the north side. So they worked very hard over December. And then we are currently in our basketball season. Started way back in November. And our boys team is doing very well right now, currently second in our conference. Our girls team unfortunately does not have the same record, but these pictures are all from the 50th anniversary of our crosstown rivalry with Oshkosh West. So that was a really fun game, and Oshkosh North won that game, so.
One of those games. One of those.
Boys game. The boys game. Back in December, on the 8th, our Polaris Honor Society hosted a movie night for students in the school. It was The Grinch, the 2018 version. This was kind of a first-time event for Polaris, so I mean, it wasn't a huge turnout, but it was successful for them. And then before winter break started, our Oshkosh North choirs had their holiday cheer concert, which included the Madrigals and then all of the Oshkosh North choirs. So that was, that had a lot of the community and all of the groups together. Meanwhile, our Oshkosh North dance team has had competitions over these last 2 months. Their last one was in Kaukauna on the 14th, and they've been performing at our basketball games, our home basketball games, and then they performed at the Northwest game on Friday. They have regionals coming up this Saturday at DC Everest High School. Our Oshkosh North choirs also have been featured in a lot of huge conferences recently in the last 2 weeks. They performed at in Appleton at the WCDA conference for choral teachers. They were featured among 3 different groups, and then last Friday at the WASB conference in Milwaukee for the governor. So that was a huge accomplishment for ONHS choirs. And then we have a lot of upcoming events for Oshkosh North for the rest of this month. So I didn't include all the athletics for the month because there's a lot, but for the rest of this week there are 2 wrestling meets. One of them's an invitational on Saturday, and then there's a boys basketball game tomorrow instead of Friday at Oshkosh North, and then a girls basketball game on Friday, and then boys hockey play on Saturday. Also this Saturday, we are hosting our winter formal dance in our field house. So lots of people are excited for that, and tickets have been on sale all week. So following that, February 13th through the 17th is Oshkosh North Sasquatch Days. It's kind of a week-long winter celebration that Oshkosh North has been putting on for a long time. There'll be a pep rally and then events throughout the week along with Spirit Days. And then our musical is also that week, Big Fish, and the tickets are on sale at the Opera House. That's what's going on at Oshkosh North.
Thank you.
Nice.
Great, thanks, Owen.
Very good.
All right, Tessa.
Hi, so I'm Tessa, and I'm here on behalf of Oshkosh West to share what's up with the Wildcats. So for starters, just on Friday, we had our boys and girls basketball game at the Herd Stadium, and like Owen said, unfortunately, our boys lost, but our girls did win, so that was very exciting, and I know students had a lot of fun. And then our bowling team has been doing very well. All 3 teams are currently first in conference, and varsity and JV are undefeated. And we also have senior Luke Schaefer, and he is currently ranked 2nd in the conference. And our dance team has been performing at various invitationals in the past couple months. And just recently, they placed 5th in D1 kick at the Kaukauna Dance Invite, and this weekend they will be competing at regionals. Our other winter sports, including boys swimming, gymnastics, the Adaptive Sports League, and boys hockey, have all been competing well and having a lot of fun. This week is the start of the performances of SpongeBob the Musical. So the different performances that you can go to are listed on the slide. And our choir has also did madrigals before winter break, and they put on lots of very nice performances. Also before break, we had our annual student versus staff basketball game, which was a lot of fun to attend, but unfortunately the students did lose. Student Council just a couple weeks ago went to Leadership Day with the Bucks, where we attended a leadership conference, learned about the Bucks as a team and some different leadership strategies, and then we got to attend the Bucks game that night. And we had various artists who placed at the student art exhibit, and all 4 of the students who went did very well. We had a student at Oshkosh West, Violet Kraut-Kramer, who just published a book. It's called The Legend of Crystal Falls, and if you are interested or you have a kid who would be interested, it is available to purchase on both Amazon and Kindle. A while ago, Oshkosh West band students attended Bandorama, and they performed with students from the entire Oshkosh Area School District. And then our index has continued to put out various issues. If you're interested in more of what's going on at Oshkosh West, they post lots of articles, web packages, and more content for you to check out on their website. And some other news and upcoming events. Students have settled into the new semester, and this semester we welcomed a lot of new student teachers. And Snowblast Week is coming up. If you aren't familiar, Snowblast Week is a week when students get into teams and compete in various events. And then at the end of the week, we hold a dance. So that will be starting the week of February 6th.
Great.
And that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for those two reports. And next we'll go into the superintendent's good news report. All right, starting at Carl Traeger Elementary, they recently welcomed its new therapy dog, Sparty. I got a chance to meet Sparty in my school visit yesterday, so just adorable. And no, I don't need another puppy, or don't need a puppy, but Sparty kind of tests that a little bit. Sparty's the first district-owned therapy dog in our district, and he will be accompanying Ms. Heidemann, school counselor at Carl Traeger Elementary, in lessons, and will also be used for one-on-one student interventions, crisis response, reading support, and classroom celebrations. The funding for Sparty was made possible through a grant from the Herb Cole Foundation as part of Ms. Heidemann's Cole Fellowship Award. So she was generous enough to be able to direct the funds to have Sparty's services. So we look forward to seeing the positive impact that Sparty can make. The next few slides will capture some of the many ways that Oshkosh Area School District was spotlighted during last week's State Education Convention in Milwaukee. I'm going to talk through some of the events, and then I'll invite board members, all of whom have participated in some way, to maybe give their highlights also. So it was truly remarkable to see so many of our students, staff, and board members engaged at this level and be held up as exemplars across the state. So first up, as was mentioned before, the Oshkosh North Chorale had the opportunity to perform for the governor at the General Assembly. It was incredible to see their talents and passions displayed for the entire state of Wisconsin. So well done to that group. So as also mentioned before, we had 4 students from Oshkosh West who received top honors and had their artwork displayed during the convention. And I can tell you that these pictures just don't do it justice, not only when you see the art, but also see the narrative that goes with the art to provide some context. So there's really some moving pieces. So well done to everyone who participated. And now to spotlight a few of our leaders, our transition team presented a workshop at the State Education Convention spotlighting the incredible ways our district is building employability skills for students with IEPs and those in need of support in preparation for life after graduation. Special thank you to team members that presented, Chris Steinhilber, Mary Beth Connors, and Patty Kimball, as well as Linda Piron for their leadership that they all provide for our students. And it was on great display with a lot of interest and I think a lot of follow-ups that we're getting from other districts on how they could provide these types of services in their communities. So a job well done there. We also had an opportunity to display our long-range facilities plan and the community engagement that went with that facilities plan. So Deputy Superintendent Dave Gunlock, along with Clint Selly from Bray Architects, led a presentation about building community support to create future-ready schools. So I had an opportunity to sit on that, and they also did a great job and were a good highlight. And I would say the pinnacle of our leadership at the convention was having the WISB president, who is also our board president, Barb Herzog, address the entire convention, provided insight and reflection on her time over this past year as president of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards. We're certainly grateful for her leadership and talent and ability to just showcase Oshkosh across the state at many venues. So I know it was a busy time. So just again, congratulations. And Dr. Herzog received a standing ovation from the convention attendees. So it was a proud superintendent moment for myself, and certainly great to see Oshkosh on such great display. So with that, I think I'd just pause and just offer any opportunities for insights, from any board members from their experience. I know there was a lot of different sessions that were visited, so just an opportunity to contribute.
I'd just like to say it was very informative. I was happy to be able to participate in the different aspects of the convention. I was very proud to be part of the Oshkosh Area School District family.
That's great. Thank you. Christopher?
Yeah, it was, I didn't have much expectation going into that few days, other than just kind of try to enjoy it, and first time being there. It was an amazing event to just network with people and see the different presentations. The presentation that we, as a district, put together about the naming of Val Phillips was a great moment for us, I think, to be able to showcase how we all work together and how proud I am to be on a board with such great individuals that we get a chance to impact our community in such a great way. But and Oshkosh was showcased so often at that event. It was really amazing and a proud moment. So, thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Oh, yeah, I'll share a little bit. I always love going to these conferences. The reasons that I ran to be a school board member are usually presented there in presentations that we're able to attend. I was specifically able to go to one about the reading curriculum adoption through the St. Francis School District. And it was really cool to see because it sounded like, what I gathered, that they're just a year or two ahead of the process that we have started. So it just always feels good when you know that we're on the right track with other districts that are seeing good results. I also attended a lot of presentations about mental health. One specifically that had students as the panel, talking about the efforts they've made in their schools to be more inclusive and prevent bullying. And so it was just really insightful to learn some of those topics that I'm so passionate about as an education leader.
Great. Thank you. Anybody else care to share? All right. Well, thank you all for coming down. Certainly it was a great opportunity.
Excuse me, I did want to jump in. There were several highlights for me during this convention. The presence of Oshkosh that was already noted, and the enthusiasm of Mary Beth Connors, Chris Steinhilber, and Patty Kimball for talking about our transition program, specifically addressing Project Search and the Brewing Futures Cafe. They are great salespeople and ambassadors for our district and for those programs. And the applause that was received by the video that was shared at the Thursday general session on the Brewing Futures program was very heartwarming. And then noting that of all the art pieces that were part of the art exhibition, four of the top 10 awards went to students at Oshkosh West, and 4 was the maximum number of pieces that could be submitted. Perhaps if they'd submitted 10, we would have won all 10, I don't know. But anyway, it was great to see Oshkosh highlighted there. The performance of the North Chorale was well received at the general session on Friday. And then Kaylee Heidemann, Carl Traeger elementary teacher, has been noted, who was a Teacher of the Year and was recognized at the convention with a crowd of over 1,000 people. So it was just so heartwarming to see the presence of Oshkosh. I've said it before and I'll say it again, we have some of the best educators in the state of Wisconsin in this district, and it was evident there. And then being looking around the room with my fellow colleagues and Dr. Davis at our presentation on the naming of a school, and the professionalism and enthusiasm that each of you brought to that was very touching. So very happy to be part of this board and part of this group that is making positive changes for our students.
Yeah. Great.
May I add something too?
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you. My highlight was walking around with Dr. Herzog because she is so well known across the state, and I'm very proud of her work this year with WASB as president. And the other highlight I wanted to share is I went to a breakout session on storytelling for social media, and a lot of it I think that we are already doing, but my big takeaway was the quote, "We need to make the positive so loud that the negative becomes almost impossible to hear." I really like that, so thank you for letting me share.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, moving on.
All right. So beyond the convention, to Oakwood Elementary kindergartners, there recently spent time learning about Martin Luther King Jr. They read the book Martin's Big Words and talked about how he always just used words to solve big problems. The kindergartners noticed that he saw the best in everyone and used love to solve problems. Then they did an activity with 2 different colored eggs and noticed that they were the exact same inside, just like people. So great job at Oakwood Elementary. The kindergarten through 2nd grade students at Jefferson recently had fun at the Appleton Building for Kids Museum. Students were busy exploring and learning. You got some great pictures there from their experience, so thanks for everybody involved there. And as was mentioned earlier, we had a great community event last Friday. We had nearly 3,000 people come out to celebrate 50 years of the Oshkosh basketball crosstown rivalry at the arena. The doubleheader between Oshkosh West and Oshkosh North was filled with school spirit, talented players on all teams, band members, dance teams, and the twirl team was amazing to see. Also wanted to say thank you, and we had an incredible welcome to recognize many of the basketball alumni from the 50 years as part of that event also. So thanks for everybody who did some extra legwork to make that happen, but it was certainly a very memorable event for everybody that went. And finally, just again, a reminder of our COVID-19 plan for the 22-23 school year. And then just a list of many activities over the last couple of weeks. Again, it's been great to be able to network both at a state level and then be able to also just get out in our schools and spend some time with our students. So, and that concludes the superintendent's reports for tonight.
Dr. Davis, can I add something, or maybe just
sure.
make a note?
Yeah.
I hope we don't have to wait another 50 years to have a game like that for our community. I thought it was an amazing event. So
yes, great. Thank
that's
you.
my plug.
Thank you. We'll pass that on. So.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. Next, then, we move on to District Administrator Supplemental Report, starting with the verbal report from the January 11th, 2023 Board Listening Session with Dr. Denmark reporting.
Good evening, everyone. We had 4 individuals come speak at the January 11th listening session. The first individual talked a little bit about attendance and was kind of wondering, why are we placing so much focus on attendance? Why don't just kids attend school? And Matt Kemmer did a nice job of explaining the importance of attendance and why it is so critical for us to focus on that, and the majority of our students do attend school, and we are certainly well above the state average in that regard. So that was a good opportunity. The second individual talked about a concern about where we place our most experienced teachers in relation to our highest need schools, and the fact of trying to not have so many first-year teachers or have so much transition in those schools, and is there a way for us to get more experienced folks with the learners who have the greatest needs. So we talked about that at length. The last 2 individuals focused on our equity work and the ICS process, and the fact that they would like to see more urgency and faster progress. They had inquired about the equity audit and whether it had been completed. We informed them that it in fact had been completed and communicated, and we were able to provide some key information regarding the transparency and to make sure the data is easily accessed by the public. And those are the 4 individuals who spoke at listening session.
Any questions? Thank you, Dr. Davis, or excuse me, Dr. Dunlop.
You're welcome.
Very good. Okay, we also have explanation of school district tax bill from Mr. Nehans. As we know, there have been members of the public who have raised questions about the tax bills received in the month of December.
Good evening. So my report was surrounded the explanation of what our tax bills are and some of the reasons behind why some people would be receiving an increase in taxes. The mill rate and the strategy that the district's been using to manage our tax levy is really to manage the mill rate. We set a target a couple years ago as a board to try to keep our mill rate in the 9.41 as our target, $9.41. That was what the number was, the mill rate was for 2020, 2021. For this last year, 2022, 2023, we had a mill rate of $9.40. So it dropped a penny, trying to keep that as our target. So for some people, what that is going to mean is some of them, their taxes did go up. Property valuations within our 7 municipalities increased 11%. So as property values grow, the district has an increased capacity to levy taxes at a equalized rate that would be the same, but property values did grow. Again, what we're trying to do is focusing on a mill rate so we don't have a yo-yo effect on taxpayers where one year it could drop 50 cents, the next year it'll go back up 45 cents. We're trying to keep that mill rate a little bit more even. So there's a couple other variables in what the property taxpayers will be reflected on, but we don't control those as a school board. By doing this, one of the important keys for this is our ability to manage our debt. And by doing this strategy and keeping our debt levy to keep our mill rate where it is, we've managed to save $33 million of interest in the last 3 years from debt payments. So it is having a big impact on the taxpayers when you look at our debt over the long term. Are there any questions?
I mean, I would just like to highlight that our operational costs have went down, and if you could explain to the public how we've done that. You know, I mean, there's been a lot of, you know, and then whenever anyone gets their tax bill, I don't think anyone is like, yay, you know what? Yep. And I think everyone looks at it and they're like, boy, you know, why did that happen there? You know, because during the holiday season, and preferably maybe they would mail it out at a different time, but it is what it is. So it's good to hear that, you know, it was due to people's property values increasing largely, but then also we've been doing a good job, I believe, because our operational costs have, you know, went down, which I think is really rare in any organization. So if you could maybe explain to the public how we've done that. Sure.
So in your report, there's a chart that kind of is illustrating what Mr. Wright is talking about. The operational fund levy dropped about $5.5 million, and that's going to be a combination of our enrollment numbers declined slightly, but also we increased our state aid amount by $3.5 million-ish, $4 million increase in our state aid, which minimizes what then we have to levy on the taxpayers. So as we continue to shift money into the state, we don't tax as much onto the local taxpayers. So the bulk of the $5.5 million savings is because we shifted that burden of that revenue to the state instead of the local taxpayers.
Thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else? Great explanation. Thank you, Drew. I appreciate your time and your excellent presentation.
Yes, thank you.
We have a series of committee reports and then a student report that will wind up that section of the agenda. So let's go on to the Education Committee, please.
Yes, so we met on Thursday, January 5th, and most of what we discussed at that meeting was talked about at the January 11th meeting under supplemental reports, talking through addressing literacy in different demographics. So I'm not going to go through all of that again, but there are a couple moments here or parts that I'd just like to read that came out of our Education Committee meeting. The district is strong in equity with a wealth of diversity and experiences that students can relate to. which in turn will help to understand others. OASD library media specialists focus on purchasing books that include diversity. Purchase lists allow administration to see the diverse representation. The same books are purchased for all school libraries to allow all students access to the same resources. At the state level, Dr. Davis is part of the DPI Literacy Committee. Its focus for this first year is family engagement in early literacy, which will be seen as the next phase for our district. So I think just a couple pieces to highlight from that committee. And anybody who wants more information can honestly watch the January 11th meeting and get most of that supplemental report that that Julie and Kim had shared then. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 2nd. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carnes. Facilities and Finance Committee.
Thank you. I have 2 meetings to report on. The first one was held on December 15th. There was a playground fundraiser for Reed School, elementary school, and there was a suggestion made to accept gift funds for the replacement of some of the playground equipment that's in need of replacement or repair. The Oshkosh Area School District would oversee those choices to ensure that we know that the equipment that's being replaced is safe. There was an update on the travel agent that the Oshkosh Area School District uses. Ambassador Travel was our current travel agency, and they will be closing their business. We put out a bid and chose the 2 least expensive agencies to work with in tandem. The 2 agencies are chosen are Journey Travel and Tours, LLC, and Let's Go Places Travel, LLC. The next meeting that we had was held on January 24th. We talked about a 4K transition to Shapiro Elementary. Phase 2 of the long-range plan calls for the relocation of 4K sites to one location, which may be Shapiro. 3 4K classrooms that are currently at the Webster Stanley site will need to be relocated this summer due to the demolition of Webster Stanley in June. The next item was reclassification of a current student information system assistant. As a result of an evaluation of essential functions of this position, it was recommended that this position be reclassified. A request for school demolition. We've been getting requests from the public in regards to items that might be available as schools are demolished. And there will be a streamlined process which allows people to walk through Webster Stanley building before the demolition takes place. Any outtakes, any property will be, they're talking about it right now, what will be available for the public. But it will be very systematic. There was a recommendation for approval of 3 contractors for 3 different upcoming projects. Those 3 projects are the Secure Entrance Project, which we recommend go to Capelli Dietrich. There were 2 contractors that bid. Dufresne Moving for the Merrill Webster move. There were 3 bids, and Dufresne is getting our recommendation. And 3 bids for the North High School roofing repairs. And I did not write it down. It is from Fond du Lac. It is Walsdorf. And that is my report.
Thank you, Mrs. Wyman. Moving on to the Legislative Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Herzog. The Legislative Committee met on Wednesday, January 11th. This was right after our CISA 6 breakfast with our legislators. So each of the committee members provided a summary of the discussions that took place at their table with legislators at the CISA 6 breakfast. We went over some of the conversations that we had and determined that we need to continue to advocate for our 3 main areas of voucher impact, advocacy around a per pupil revenue increase, and special education funding. We also agree that the talking points that were developed by Dr. Davis and Mr. Nehans were incredibly helpful during our group conversations, and they had reference points and numbers that were readily available for us to share with our legislators. We are going to continue to meet with our legislators on a regular basis, and we'll invite them to our meetings, and we assigned our legislative committee members to specific representatives and whatnot. And we will be meeting again on, nope, we do not have a meeting set yet. But I do want to mention that we will be participating in Day at the Capitol on March 24th, which any board member who might be interested in attending is welcome to attend. We do not have a future meeting agenda, or a future meeting date, but I'm sure we will have one soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Carlin. Policy and Governance Committee.
Thank you, Dr. Herzog. The Policy and Governance Committee met on Tuesday, January 10th at 1 p.m. We had our shortest agenda in a while. Agenda item number 1, we updated the Human Growth and Development Policy, just basically to match up with the new Neola recommendations, just to clean it up a little bit. And then policy 2 and 3 that we went over, assessment of different district goals and assessment of, we put in an administrative guideline 1110. We just basically to get the equity non-negotiables into policy. That was what we talked about in our meeting and forwarded to the board to do. So, thank you.
Thank you. Human Growth and Development.
All right, so we had met back in, on November 28th, and we had reviewed, so we're a yearly committee, so once a year we'll give this update. We reviewed the policies, including any updates, so policy 2240, policy 2131, and policy 2414. Made sure that they were up to date. An area we talked about was the health class for high school and offered in 9th grade. And as we heard at the last board meeting, and something we want to showcase is that the expanded summer options for anybody who wants to take that class. Last year there was no wait list. So anybody who will want to take that class will be able to get in the summertime if they wanted to take their 9th grade health before 9th grade actually starts. And then lastly, we had gone through some other topics, but something I want to kind of focus on is something that I had talked about at the meeting. I'd probably said last year when we did this, but it's a passion of mine to be on this committee. The state policy is very clear, as some of you have seen in the updated policy coming out today. Abstinence is the state guideline that has to be followed. We are there, but we are also here as educators and in our district to inform and not necessarily promote. Part of our strategic plan is to make everyone career, college, and community ready. And part of that is being able to have real discussions about topics in here. So it's an area that, for whatever reason, we may struggle to prepare the next generation as well as we can. So part of what I said and part of the notes here are just to make sure that we are preparing our students as best we can for the real world applications of what they're going to see and learn as well. So nothing set next for the next committee, but we will meet probably around the same time next year. So thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Carnes. And now we move on to student report on mental health. Mr. Peschel, who was school board president a year ago at this time, had attended the state convention and attended a session put on by the Elmbrook School District, which represents Brookfield primarily, and learned there that the student representatives on the board were more engaged than ours were. And that's true across many districts in the state. So even though Mr. Peschel ended his tenure on the board at the end of September, Dr. Davis and I continued with this concept that we wanted the students to have a bigger voice in terms of defining some things that they wanted to talk about, not just them, but the students they represent at the two high schools. So each high school was visited by the two of us, and they've gathered data from their school in terms of what's on the students' minds. What do they want to talk about? What do they think is important that this board should consider? So this is the first of several reports that we will have from our two high school representatives. So we'll turn it over to the high school representatives as well as Mr. Kimmer.
Thank you. So today we wanted to talk about mental health and how the Oshkosh Area Board of Education can support struggling students.
Yeah, so before we get into what the students think about mental health, it's important to take into consideration the data on mental health. There's been a lot of assessments done on student bodies throughout not just the high schools, but even middle schools and elementary schools. And it's really important to use this data to put things into perspective, and it also really just displays the need in our community. So before we look at the data though, there are some things that I think are important to take into consideration, which would be that these numbers only represent students who feel comfortable reporting. While all students take certain assessments, some don't always answer honestly. And the data that's about to be shown was collected only months after school was online during the COVID-19 pandemic shutdown of school. And then each school has different circumstances. So the first set of data that I'm going to be discussing is the Youth Risk Behavior Assessment. So this was done at both schools, and we have the information from Oshkosh North and some general statistics from Wisconsin overall. This was taken in 2021 in the spring, and this is just the mental health portion of the assessment. So the first thing that was surveyed was anxiety. So these numbers represent students who have experienced significant problems with anxiety over that year. So at Oshkosh North, those numbers were fairly high at 45% overall, highest among female students. And then in Wisconsin, though, the number was even higher at 52.2%. And then under topics of depression, so these are students who have experienced prolonged destructive sadness. Oshkosh North had 26% of its students who said they have experienced this. That compares to 33.7% overall in Wisconsin. That translates also into self-harm. This is self-harm that's not students who are intending to die from it. That was 12% overall at Oshkosh North. And then suicidal thoughts and behavior. These are students who seriously considered suicide. That was at 11% at Oshkosh North, which compares to 18.1% in Wisconsin. And then there are also students who had plans to attempt. That was 10% at Oshkosh North. Overall, it was also asked how many students think they adequately get the right amount of emotional help when needed. And that number was only at 19% for Oshkosh North, which is pretty low. So, yeah.
Next, we wanted to discuss some of the Rise Up survey data. So Rise Up is another mental health focused survey and program that the Oshkosh Area School District uses. So looking at the entire district, we have data from 2021, 2022, and then 2019, 2020, or 20. And we can see that there was only a small increase in students who were referred to speak to someone. And we also saw an increase in students who were already in treatment, which is nice to see. And for the 2019-2020 school year, 31% of students screened positive. And then looking specifically at Oshkosh West and Oshkosh North, this is data from the 2020-2021 school year. We saw at Oshkosh West that 24% of students screened positive, and unfortunately this is lower than the data in 2018 and in 2019. And then at Oshkosh North, we saw 36% of students screened positive, which was also slightly less than in 2019. And we had some various student comments about the Rise Up program that gave us just some more insight on what they think. So it was very helpful to help me understand myself more. It's the most open that this student has been in a while. Students agree that it was very helpful, and that sometimes it's hard to reach out for help, so they found that this survey helped them do that. And then they agreed that it is good for others to speak out about their mental health, whether this is with someone or through this survey. So the Oshkosh Area School District is certainly making an effort to support students, whether that is with staff or with various resources. So we wanted to highlight some of those efforts. We have a lot of school psychologists, counselors, and social workers throughout the district who are working to support students, as well as various programs that the Oshkosh Area School District works with. They work with Rise Up, who provides screening and therapy services, as well as staff education. We've partnered with Catalpa, who provides need-based therapy for students, and then Rawhide Youth Services and Collaborative Wellness.
And then across both schools, there's the Sources of Strength program. So this is a program that's led by teachers and students, where students can meet and build positive student connections and also focus on mental health topics. So I know within my school this is a very strong group, and it's really important in bringing students together. And then our mental health is also discussed in our health classes and integrated throughout the curriculum. And then SOS training, so signs of suicide, has been taught to students, and is also, there's several teachers who voluntarily have been trained to spot signs of suicide amongst the students. And then there's counselor lessons within the elementary schools. And then on the back of our student IDs are suicide prevention lifeline and crisis text line numbers. And therapy dogs are welcome within schools. So at Oshkosh North, we had students get in groups within our student council, and we kind of surveyed what they thought about mental health, what could be improved, what they think the current status of things are. I think I tried to pull it all together, and I think this really shows how it's kind of intertwined throughout all sections of student life within schools. And these are kind of what students kept bringing up within these different conversations. So the first big thing was rebuilding school culture and supporting social life within high schools. So it seemed very common that students feel a lot more supported when there's a big sense of community within their school. So what's really important to maintaining that would be keeping school events accessible to all students and also affordable, whether it be dances or sporting events or performances. That also includes adequate funding towards all the clubs and extracurriculars throughout the school, making sure that all student interests are met. And that includes diversifying the school events and what students can attend, and bringing more attention and exposure to smaller groups within the school. Students also really brought up that they would appreciate a less focus on controlling behavior. it was a quote that students don't want to feel like their school's administration is working against them. So that would include a more increased emphasis on supporting student life instead of controlling it. Even though there's so many behavior issues throughout schools, students still want to know that the staff is still there to support positive relationships as well. And that includes one-on-one relationships with student and teachers. So students feel a lot more invested in their classes when they have the personal connections with their teachers. And a lot of students were wondering, could their interests be better integrated into curriculum? Like, could there be more flexibility and freedom within class time for teachers to better cater their lessons to each specific individual so that they're more invested in their education? But overall, beyond just what students want for the future, a lot of them believe that mental health has definitely improved going into this school year compared to last school year, and that these topics are really good options and opportunities to reestablish purpose and community within our schools.
So we took some of the ideas that we found and also what students told us, and we have a couple things that we think you as a school board can do. So first is to consider student feedback and data. So the data is going to tell us all the important statistics and information, but truly student feedback is more important. So we want to look at the people and what they have to say rather than the numbers that are representing them. I had a lot of students tell me in regards to various surveys that they didn't necessarily feel represented by the bubbles that they were filling in, and they'd prefer being able to explain their feelings with words. We also think that there are so many good resources that the Oshkosh Area School District is already using, so we would encourage you to continue to invest in those resources and programs. They provide a support system for students that might not have access to it outside of school, so it's really important that they do have that. And it works to encourage students to get help and to speak up. And then staff are a big part of students' life. So we want to make sure that staff are trained and ready to support students. So we would suggest a staff mental health awareness training day, and in talking to our schools, one of our school psychologists, she recommended that we focus on prevention, recognition, support, and then, if needed, referring students to talk to somebody. And we'd love for this to be mandatory because we want to make sure all staff are learning about this. And then it's also possible to hire more staff. We looked into some of the recommended staff ratios and found that for school psychologists it's 1 to 500, for school counselors it's 1 to 250, and then school social workers is also 1 to 250. And the Oshkosh Area School District currently just isn't quite meeting those ratios, so we know that having more staff as well as more trained staff would be beneficial. Do we have any questions or comments? Did you want to add anything?
I did just want to thank Tessa and Owen for focusing in on this very important topic. I had an opportunity to chat with both of them last week. They both asked great questions and were very insightful, and it allowed me to learn about what students are thinking and feeling about mental health from their perspective, so I wanted to thank them for that.
I think you really wowed us.
Yeah.
You presented a lot of information for us to reflect on. I'm really glad we have this opportunity.
I have a
Mrs.
comment.
Carlin.
I'd like to thank you both for such a great presentation. I really appreciate it. And in reflecting on some of your comments and slides, I take heart in not seeing the word stigma on your slides. I think that before the pandemic, we were talking about breaking the stigma of mental health, and mental health matters to everyone, and we know that. And I think we've broken the stigma. I think the pandemic broke the stigma. Mental health matters, and we all have mental health. I have mental health, you have mental health matters. So I take heart in knowing that we're talking about it, and it's normalized. And I love that students are talking about it, and it's normalized. And I like that we have so many resources for our students. But I've always said, and I will continue to say, that when a student is in crisis, where do they go? And, yes, you can call the suicide hotline. Yes, you can reach out to friends. But my dream is to see some sort of community crisis center where if you are really struggling, you can go and be safe. Because seeing the statistics of students that consider suicide, and it's scary. And I really would like to see our community have a place. And I know that that's like a huge pipe dream and a pie in the sky idea, but wouldn't it be great if we had a safe place that if you were feeling unsafe or scared or self-harming, that you could go to instead of just calling a number? So thank you for your feedback and your input. It's very valuable. I appreciate it.
Mr. Carnes?
I appreciate both of you. I like the idea, we've talked about at the board, I brought it up before, the sense of community within the high schools. So trying to see student engagement, right? Is everybody involved with something? Because that matters. And I know we've been, Dr. Davis, you're working on that, the school report cards or the school, eventually that's going to be a piece of that. And I think that's an important piece of the story that we need to be aware of. So I was very happy to see that, because know that that is something that we are looking at and going to be involved with. I would love to know, what is our current staffing numbers for what they're, asking for? What do we currently have?
Right up there.
Is that what we currently have?
Yeah.
Okay, so what would be the translation? What would we need?
A lot more.
Like 18 schools? I was doing some math, right? I think 18 school psychologists, a lot more social workers. What's 18? I'm trying, I don't know, like 36 school social workers and school counselors.
Yeah, but it's not just, the resources aren't there. I mean, there's not enough people in the profession to fill the gaps that exist.
No, and I obviously it comes down to dollars, right? And not only that, but dollars and what we can do. I was just curious to know where we were based on. I think it's important to not only looking at the crisis management of it, but also the people who just need someone to talk to once a month in school. Like sometimes I think that gets lost for obvious reasons for the people who need it more, but I would love to be able to offer that to anybody who's like, hey, once a month I'd love a check-in. I'd love to be able to just sit down for 10 minutes and just maybe talk through it, because even though they might have support at home, it's nice to hear it from somebody else, sometimes to be able to talk through that. So I agree with you, Stephanie, and I think that many of us, if we could wave a magic wand and give everything, I think we would like to. But I'm glad that we're able to have this conversation and talk about it, and it's become more normal, at least. So I think we're making progress, not as fast as we would like to, but yeah, I would like to see exactly, and I read it wrong, otherwise I would have done the numbers too, and to see what that is, but I'm sure we have some work to do, but thank you both.
And the two of you probably know the numbers better. I was just doing quick math. You can correct me if I was off.
No, you were actually pretty close, and over the past several years, the board has thankfully done a great job in making incremental progress in our ratios, where, at one point we didn't have a full-time counselor in every one of our schools, especially at the elementary level, and that has changed. And we've slowly but surely been building up our school psychologist FTE and our social worker FTE. So while it's not at the recommended ratios, we've been doing a really nice job of having that mental health focus and trying to build it up more.
I think it points out the evolution, the evolution of what schools serve. right? Because, you know, we're a legacy institution that was really built like when I'll just use myself as an example. When I was in high school, counselors were there to help you out with college and make sure that, you know, if you wanted and interested in a job opportunity, like they would do that, right? So that's a very different model, staffing model, than it is when you're talking about supporting mental health for students. And so that's been our evolution. But when you're also talking about funding sources, that legacy funding sources haven't changed either. That's a lot of the conversations, which kind of moves into the legislative advocacy around like the needs that we have and why we need funding, because these are real, you know, community needs. It's not just the schools, you know, the schools needs, these are community needs that, you know, we can serve through the schools. So that just continues to be, you know, an evolution as we look at it.
This is Salaji.
Yes, I also just want to say thank you for sharing that data with us and doing this presentation. It's really nice to hear this new presentation. You know, you come every month and share what's going on in the school, but this is a deeper dive, and I appreciate that. I do think this slide right here is what's striking me the most. You know, often when we ask administrators to give reports, and then we as a board ask, well, what do you need from us? To realize that we have students here that have put in time and effort to a report, and to say, and here's what we need from you, it's really powerful for me. So I'm wondering, the first one, the training, do we have that looking out the rest of this school calendar or maybe into next school calendar? Is that something that we will put on our schedule?
So we currently train our staff in something called QPR, Question, Persuade, Refer, at the beginning of each school year. It's only about a 2-hour training. It gives a pretty broad overview in terms of recognizing suicidal ideation within others. We have had other optional trainings like youth mental health first aid, conscious discipline training, love and logic, and those are not only for educators but for community members as well. We've never taken the step of having a full day training solely dedicated to mental health that all staff have to attend.
Mandatory, yeah.
We could certainly do that. It would just involve more conversation, you know, at the administrative level.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are all, again, I thank you guys for the report, because these are all suggestions that we can take back, both at a district level and then at each school, right? And be able to make sure that the principals and staff there can hear that student voice, which is exactly why we wanted to be able to have the opportunity for these types of presentations, and knowing that, you know, the ask for these reports was to, you know, solicit interesting topics that students wanted to report back on. And, you know, I'll second Mrs. Carlin's, you know, reference to the fact that mental health came back as the first report. I think really does say a lot about like the need for us to continue to talk and continue to support, because that's not by accident either. So again, thank you guys for your leadership on this.
I'd like to go back a slide if we could, please. Maybe one more. Sorry. I'm just wondering if you could give us a little more clarification on some of these. But what I see is that there are things that the board could be involved in. There are things that district administration could be involved with. For example, we do have those Fridays now, those full days of Friday for professional development. So we have a mechanism to do that. And I'm aware of districts across the state that have taken the name of every student in that school and have had staff members say, who do they identify with? And they make sure that every child in that, or every student, I should say, in that school has someone who identifies with them, who reaches out to them, makes a point of reaching out, and making those connections, and developing relationships that you were talking about. That's just one strategy. So I'd like to go back to a couple of these because I'm just curious about these. When you referred to a dance coming up, how do we make sure that an event like that is accessible and affordable for all students?
Well, right off the bat, lower tickets, but a lot of lower ticket prices. And for a lot of the people who are organizing the dances, the ticket prices depend on how much they're paying for the dance, whether it be like DJ costs or decorations and stuff. And I mean, as things get expensive in our society, so will the ticket prices. But a lot of students can't afford to spend $15 on a ticket to get into a dance. So Might that be providing more resources to those organizing school events so that there's less of a burden for needing to reimburse through tickets? That's one route.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Also, I think more messaging on what's going on in the school and making sure that reaches every student. I think there's definitely pockets of the school that might not even know that there's even a dance going on. I mean, there's definitely a need to pull everyone together into what's going on within the schools, and I think that helps things be more accessible, is just simply knowing what's going on.
What communication platforms would you recommend that would be appropriate and that could be used to engage students? Because I know the way teenagers I have some communicate is way different than I did as a when I was their age.
Well, I think a big thing over the last few years has been trying to reach students through social media, but personally I think that only gets so far. I mean, our student council runs a social media page. I think a lot of school organizations and clubs have their own social media pages, but I mean the followers are like 200 to 500. The school has almost 1,000 kids. It's clearly not everyone. So whether it be through announcements, I'm not 100% sure how every student can be reached. We have our TV9 program at Oshkosh North that does news every Monday. Students, I would say it's like 50-50 who even pay attention to it, so that's why I'm not sure 100% how.
I think it's a good opportunity, though, to, again, have you guys, and you guys from a student leadership standpoint, and us from an administrative standpoint, is just to be able to take this feedback, back to principals and back to your student body and saying, hey, collectively, like, how do we do this, right? Like, that's what we want to make sure that we can close the loop back on those processes, because generally it's going to be the kids at school are going to be able to solve this issue. Like, they'll be able to be the ones to say, yeah, well, if I had it here, here, and here, I think that'll be good. And just being able to monitor that as we're moving forward, so.
I'm intrigued by the whole concept of sense of community. And I think that's probably something that starts at the school level, maybe even a classroom level or a club, small group level. But that to me is, I just find that fascinating as to how do we help that? I was talking recently with a coach from one of the high schools and noting that there seemed to be a relatively small turnout for participation. And then I was talking with a local business owner who also has established a nonprofit foundation to put an emphasis on getting shoes, the appropriate athletic footwear to students who want to participate in an athletic endeavor. Because if you don't have the right shoes, it's tough, and shoes aren't necessarily cheap to participate on a varsity level. So I know there's some interest in the community, and the Women's Fund of the Oshkosh Area Community Foundation had worked with high school girls from the 4 schools about 3 years ago, I think, and they gave them a sum of money to improve in an area, and those girls at that time chose mental health, and so they were able to provide that money, but that was a one-time only. And this topic goes on because every year we have new students. So I know there's interest in the community. I think there are some resources that could be tapped to assist with some of these areas. And it's not something it's going to be solved overnight. It's not a check mark. We did that, we can move on. It's going to be with us forever. But I think we can make some improvements here based on what you shared. The other question I have is the one on less focus on controlling behavior. Could you define that one a little bit?
So there were a few, like I had my own group that talked, and there were a few people who mentioned they want more positive messaging coming from like their administration and their teachers. I think there's always a lot of focus on making sure things are peaceful in classrooms and in cafeterias and making sure students don't act out. And I think if you focus too much on controlling it, I mean, a lot of behavior originates from mental health. And I think if students are acting out in certain environments within school, that's a representation of where there's a need for more mental health support. So I think less of an emphasis on controlling certain behavioral issues and more how can we prevent that from happening again and why are things happening and more positive aspect.
Interesting. That makes sense. I'd like to see you two come back. Well, I know you join us every month, but I mean, come back with this topic perhaps in May and maybe give us an update on what's been accomplished and what we still need to do from the perspective of students. And in the meantime, the board can work with Dr. Davis and Mr. Kimmer on the staffing. That's not going to be an easy one to crack in that I believe there's a shortage of school psychologists across the state.
Yeah, there has been for a while.
And so there's not a big pool of people necessarily looking to go into that. And even the school counseling programs at the state colleges and universities is not as robust perhaps as many of us in education would like to see. But that doesn't mean we can't try.
Right.
And that we can't improve our ratios. If we put students first, we really have to pay attention to what they've shared with us tonight and those ratios.
Great. Can I just add, thank you so much for sharing this information. I found this to be so profound, and for both of you for advocating for your peers. I want to just highlight the less focus on controlling behavior. I found that to be the most intriguing point. And, you know, what you've said through your student group was that students feel that teachers and administration are more trying to control their behaviors versus more like positive messaging. It's just making a point that, you know, I think it's good for teachers, administrators to kind of check their biases and have an understanding on, you know, based on how they grew up or their own you know, cultural expectations of what behavior looks like. I think that's a good reminder for all of us that we all have our own, you know, ideas around what that looks like, but engaging with students is a really positive way to, you know, build that trust and understanding, deepen understanding. So thank you so much for all of the points that you've brought up.
Final thoughts?
Final thoughts. Thank you both. How wonderful it is that your fellow students had the two of you to represent them with this topic. And I know we can do more, and I'm sure after this you're motivated to do more at your school with your student body. I'm really excited that together we can make some strides in this. And as we've all said, it won't be easy to go out and hire 15 people, but there is so much that we can do just with what you've learned. And becoming aware of these things helps the process tenfold and helps it move faster. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kemmer.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, next we would go on to non-agenda related public forum. No one has signed up for that this evening, and no one has signed up for the agenda related public forum either. So we will move on to the consent resolution agenda.
Dr. Herzog, point of order.
I'm sorry?
Point of order.
Yes.
Was I supposed to give the WASB Delegate Assembly update during the Good News Report?
Yes.
Okay.
So we can...
Let's table it for next time.
We can put that on the next agenda.
That sounds
Thank
good.
you. So for the consent resolution agenda, the board has been furnished with background information on each item or has discussed it at a previous meeting. These will be acted on with one vote without discussion.
So moved.
Second.
That was Wyman and Carnes. Thank you very much. Please call the roll.
Carlin.
Aye.
Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you very much. Next, we move on to individually considered resolutions. We have two this evening. The first is, be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve waiving policy 7250.01, naming of district facilities, for the naming of the new elementary school as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So move.
Second.
Wyman and Wright. Is there any discussion? I had asked that this one be put on the agenda because the policy only references naming a school after a person or an individual, and that is not what the proposal is that came out of our discussion at the last meeting, nor from the citizen survey of over 4,000 pieces of data. So we would need to approve the waiver in order to name the new elementary school for the proposal as presented.
Are you looking for a motion?
We have it.
We have it.
Okay.
Wyman and Wright.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion?
No.
Please call the roll.
Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you very much. So next we move on to resolution number 17, which is naming approval of naming the new elementary school. Be it resolved that the Oshkosh Area School District Board of Education approve naming the new elementary school, Menominee Elementary School, as filed with the Secretary to the Board of Education.
So moved.
Second.
Carnes and Carlin. Discussion.
So I'll just start, and again, just bring your attention to the staff report related to the relationship and communications with the Menominee Tribal Nation in regards to this request. So I've been in touch with Randall Chevalier from the chairman's office, and we've had several communications, which has included the chairman, also included Joy Awahapi, who is the secretary to the tribal legislature and also the director of the Menominee Language and Culture. So been on a series of email strings to make sure that they're aware of our proposal. And their recommendation, as I had stated in the report, is to first of all go to their committee on Menominee Language and Culture and get approval from that committee to be forwarded then to the tribal legislature for approval. And so that's the recommended route. We can get on the February 2nd committee coming up, and then from there, then it would go to the legislature. So all of their feedback that I've received at this point has been positive. They appreciate us reaching out, and I think this can be a very constructive relationship for us moving forward, and potentially just beginning immediately after the tribal legislature would approve the name of the school. Our ability to be able to begin conversations about mascots and symbols as we're developing and finishing the design of the school, I think can be just instant opportunities for our students and our community to learn and grow as partnerships as we're moving forward. So. The one conversation that I have had relative to the resolution is the idea that potentially we would want to have this resolution be contingent on the approval from the tribal legislature, not to be presumptive, in our motion or appear to be presumptive in that. So that's part of the conversations that I've had that I think would require an amendment, but I think would be in line with conversations that I've had with the tribal members.
Thank you, Dr. Davis.
So you mentioned it. So yeah, thank you. That it would require an amendment. When in the process would that amendment be made?
That would be right now.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I just wanted to make sure. Okay. I can make that amendment. I don't know if you were going to say something instead, though.
Well, I just had a quick comment. several of us were having lunch at the WASBO or WASDA luncheon, and I think there were 5 of us at our table, and we had 3 empty seats, and these 2 seats were filled by 2 gentlemen from the Menominee School District. And they sat down and they said, "Name your school Menominee." And we said, "We can't talk about that because we're voting about it this week." And then I asked them, "How did you hear about the fact that Menominee was up for a vote?" And they said they'd recently been in Oshkosh and they saw it on the news or heard it on the news or something. But I thought that was very profound, and I believe that was perfect timing. And for me, that kind of just is a beautiful bow tie on this process. I'm glad that we are honoring the community vote. I am glad that we have been transparent throughout the whole process, and I will, on that, support Ms. Salaji's amendment to, what are we amending? To
Yeah, I don't know what
wait
language we would
for
use.
the
Pending approval.
pending approval.
Just ending, yeah.
Yes.
If we could hear from Mrs. Lee, I know that she's had some conversation with Dr. Davis on this, and
Yes, I want to acknowledge my good friend Ashley Hesse, who has advised on this, who, is very knowledgeable. And so, I would also suggest that we amend the language to reflect contingency upon approval by the Menominee Tribal Legislature.
I'll second.
perfect. All right, is there discussion? This only requires a majority vote for an amendment. The actual naming requires a supermajority, which will be 5 votes.
Okay.
Is there any discussion on the amendment?
No.
No. Thank you for making it. That makes, all along, that's been my hesitation. So I feel much more confident voting on it with that amendment, the contingency, so thank you.
I think this honors the input of the community, as this was the #1 choice. Though it was advisory, it was the #1 choice of those 4,000 plus people who responded. And it honors the Menominees, the Menominee Nation's ability to weigh in on this, and that we're not being presumptuous about choosing this name. And honoring whatever requirements they might have in the naming process.
So are we first voting on the amendment, and then we'll come back to the...
First voting on the amendment.
Yeah.
Okay, are you ready, Mrs. Fitzpatrick? Okay.
Carnes?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Salaji?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
Wyman?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye.
Amendment carries.
Thank you. Now we are voting on the amended resolution. Thank you. On the amended resolution, this will take a vote of 5, and we will need we already had a...
We had Carnes and
But we need...
Carlin.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Mr. Carnes.
Yeah, I mean, we went through this before, and it sounds like we're all in favor, and as we go through this, just for our community, just think about what we've been able to do in the last 13 months, that we would potentially name a school for Menominee, and we named a school for Val Phillips. And in our community, when we look at all of our diversity and equity work, I think this is a very big statement that we can make to our community, and I'm very proud of this moment that we've gone through, and we were able to share with the state at our convention as well. So,
Thank you, Mr. Carnes. Anyone else? Please call the roll on the amended resolution.
Lee?
Aye.
Salaji?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
Wyman?
Aye.
Carlin?
Aye.
Herzog?
Aye.
Carnes?
aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you all very much. Do we have a request for any future agenda items? Mrs. Carlin?
WASB Delegate Assembly report.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? As mentioned earlier, I'd like to have our students come back briefly, perhaps with a written report in May or whenever is appropriate, to just give us an update.
Yep.
And administration can be part of that as well.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll have to schedule that around AP exams. That is
Oh,
a
yeah.
little bit tricky in May, so I'll work
All
with
right.
Tessa and Owen on the timing
Okay,
of that as we go.
perfect. Thank you. Are there any announcements? Mr. Carnes?
we saw a slide earlier about the Adaptive Sports League, and I believe I got an invite for, is it Friday, February 3rd?
Yes.
That there's an event, I think it's at Oshkosh West High School.
Yes.
So I attended one last year, watched a softball game, and it was an amazing event. So I plan on attending this one and hope that others can as well.
Great, we might have to get that properly noticed, because I think there'll probably be enough board members to attend to warrant that. And of course, there's the West Musical starting tomorrow night, running through Sunday. And the North Musical is the weekend of, I think it's the 16th through the
19th.
19th, thank you. So that's another opportunity to support our students. And of course, there are basketball games, wrestling tournaments, swim and dive. What did I miss?
Gymnastics.
Thank you, gymnastics and dance team. All right. Let's have a resolution, a motion then to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Szilagyi and Carnes, please call the roll.
Szilagyi.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Wyman.
Aye.
Carlin. Aye. Herzog.
Aye.
Carnes.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you very much. We're adjourned.
All right.
Yay.